Hello and welcome to this tactical analysis of the Atletico Madrid versus Manchester United game in the UEFA Champions League in the round of 16. If you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up. It goes a really long way with a small channel like this, and consider sharing on social media as well as subscribing. With that, let's get into it. So we're going to start with Atletico Madrid, who typically avoided short goal kicks, opting to go long. That created opportunities for them to A, have quick possession or low risk possession in Manchester United's half, or B, it set up opportunities for them to press high and narrow, including wing backs versus Manchester United throw-ins. Often those long goal kicks were looking to hit Versalco or Llorente on the right hand side, and with the positioning of Lodi and Llorente or Versalco in those wide spaces, it facilitated, especially since you started off with the long goal kick to the right hand side, facilitated a switch of play to take advantage of the width that back three gives you. Given that Atletico Madrid were looking to use long balls, and that's not a very high probability chance of progression from deep, Atletico Madrid were typically looking to be quite direct when they did have possession. This is an example of that. So we have Atletico Madrid playing out in a wide space. They've got Lodi on the ball with Correa and Felix both near side as well. They're looking to overload that side. Often one of those two forwards would drop. In this case it's Correa, but it could just as easily be Felix, and he was really good at being able to just kind of stand up whoever was defending against him and then beat them with a little skill. And with that, the fact that he's now beaten a player forces Manchester United's defense to shuffle and create space for their direct play. Also, unlike Atletico Madrid's defense, who was good at tracking Manchester United forwards when they drop, Manchester United's defense was a lot more reticent to track forwards dropping. So one, you've got Correa here, you've got Felix here. Lindelof, obviously not really a right back, doesn't want to go out and get touch tight to Felix, and then the other two centre backs as well aren't really looking to track forwards dropping. Another thing that contributed to Atletico Madrid having a good time with their direct play was Fred at centre defensive midfield for Manchester United. He doesn't have the same level of composure of either McTominay or Matic, and so Manchester United definitely struggled, I think, in this CDM position. And here we see a continuation of that play with Atletico Madrid able to switch it out to this right hand side where Versalco is now getting involved in the play. So we've got both wing backs, both Lodi and Versalco, involved in the play. Versalco is going to look to try and get a cross in when he gets higher up on the right hand side, and then you also have Felix and your other centre forward Correa looking to try and also get in the box for those crosses. But as mentioned, you just have quite a fragility here in the centre of the park. Yes, Pogba was higher up the pitch, looking to put a bit of pressure on that right hand side, but Fred was really meant to be the CDM, and I think he was playing the CDM rather than Matic later on in the game. Manchester United were quite fragile centrally. Another means of Atletico Madrid facilitating this counter-attacking style was their pressing, especially when Manchester United were passing back. So we see that in this scenario with Atletico Madrid initially setting up in a 5 at the back and then a 3 midfield and a 2 up front. But when they press, it's more of a 4-4-2, where the near-sided wing-back, in this case Lodi, becomes the wide midfielder. So he's looking to trap Rashford as Rashford drops. Typically, Lodi was the one that became a wide midfielder rather than Versalco, with Llorente becoming the right midfield in a 4-4-2 if the ball was played on this, the Atletico Madrid's right-hand side, Manchester United's left. And as this play progresses, you can see Atletico Madrid being very aggressive in their press. Felix here tracking the CDM for Manchester United, making it difficult for them to be able to alleviate the pressure and the distances for the Manchester United players between their back line and their forwards is really big, so it's very difficult for them to be able to hit them. Another big thing for Manchester United during this kind of build-up was, yes, they were being tracked, as we see here with Sancho being tracked by Versalco, but there weren't enough runners from deep other than Bruno Fernandes, and I think that was only once in the first half, looking to try and get in behind as Atletico Madrid are pulled higher up the pitch. When they play it back deeper into their own defensive third and pull the opposition in press higher up the pitch, as we see here with Atletico Madrid who are being pulled up the pitch, there's now a ton of space in behind them for your forwards to exploit, but Manchester United just were not doing that in the first half. In the second half, there was a lot more running from Rashford, looking to try and get in behind and not always come short. And also, of course, Elanga as well showed a lot of a willingness to run in behind rather than come short. In the first half, when Manchester United were playing their 3-4-3 with Lindelof as a wing back, pushing up almost into a wide midfield position and having their forwards float inside, Manchester United really struggled to try and create out in those wide spaces, even when a forward dropped and one of the Atletico Madrid players tracked that player. Manchester United were not able to take advantage of the space vacated. This is an example of that. You see the ball here get to Sancho. You've got Lindelof who's free. He can look to try and get into this space here with an overlap. He can try and get centrally. He can try and run between these two, between Ronaldo and Lodi. He chooses to go more central, but Manchester United aren't able to then exploit the spaces created by the movement of the defenders. We see here Lindelof, as mentioned, moved into that central space. We've got Lodi who's tracked one of the forwards, in this case Bruno Fernandes, dropping deeper. We've got a ton of space for Manchester United to exploit, either here centrally between Jimenez and Ronaldo, or out here in the wide space for Sancho with Ronaldo looking to track the run or the movement or positioning of Lindelof. But Manchester United do nothing with this position. Okay, so moving on, I thought another key thing to point out was the positioning of Felix, especially during their counter-attacks. He loves to drop just off the back line into that space between the lines, making it difficult for the Manchester United defenders to track. And because of his dribbling ability, it allowed Atletico Madrid's other players, whether that was the forwards or the wing backs, to also get involved, and then he could use his dribbling ability to beat a man and keep the momentum going. So you see that here with Atletico Madrid. They're trying to pass into the wide areas, but Shaw is able to win the ball back. Just before we watch Felix drop into this space just far side of Manchester United, I thought it was good to point out that Correa was really good at this throughout the game, just helping out, well, Felix as well, but Correa especially was good at just dropping a little bit deeper when Atletico Madrid are out of possession and helping out his centre midfielders and just putting a foot in and making it difficult for United in those central spaces. Eventually, due to Bruno Fernandes' questionable pass to Fred and Correa nipping in, and then Kondogbia being able to pass back, and Atletico Madrid being able to escape towards their right hand side with Savic, and then centrally you can see here Felix, who, as I mentioned, would drop a little bit deeper as Atletico Madrid are looking to set up their counter attack. We've got Lodi also preparing for the counter attack, getting into a more counter attacking position. Again, I just have to point out how much space there is here between the potential source of danger for Atletico Madrid here in these two players far side and the Manchester United defenders. Of course, Lindelof is actually a centre back, and a very good one at that. So I can see why he'd be uncomfortable in closing this gap a little bit. But this kind of positioning by Felix was really, really good for helping Atletico Madrid during their counter-attacks. As mentioned earlier, Manchester United tried a 3-4-3. They had three centre-backs on, and so they tried to somewhat match Atletico Madrid with got their shape as well. Again, we have Atletico Madrid set up in their 4-4-2, adjusting from that 5-3-2 to 4-4-2 with Lodi, the left wing back, moving from his left wing back position into a left midfield position, Llorente being that right midfielder, just as in the previous scenario. Manchester United set up in that 3-4-3 as mentioned, so you've got your three centre backs. Although I point out the three centre backs here, they're not always set up like this. Lindelof wasn't always playing a right centre back. Sometimes he was actually the right midfielder. This was when Manchester United had possession a little bit higher up, and in that scenario then you'd have the forwards for Manchester United able to roam. When Lindelof was in this right midfield position, then instead you'd have Fred as one of the centre backs, typically dropping to be the central centre back with Varane and Harry Maguire flanking him either side. That allowed Varane or Maguire to be able to run around the 5-3-2 shape that Atletico Madrid had, because the centre forwards for Atletico Madrid, so Correa and Felix, were more preoccupied with trying to negate passes into Fred. Another two things to note from this scenario are: one, Ronaldo dropping. He did this throughout the game, dropping both into the right hand side channel but then also into the left hand side channel. He was constantly looking to try and link play with the defensive unit of the team, but then also Bruno Fernandes in the first half was constantly dropping into this right back position, looking to try and just get on the ball and use his passing ability from deep to be able to influence things, but they did not get much out of it. Anyway, Fernandes passes it out wide to Sancho, who's dropping off, as I mentioned, the forwards for Manchester United constantly dropping off and typically tracked. Here, Ronaldo isn't tracking him all the way, but Lodi's coming across to put pressure. So Sancho will be forced to continue back. This dropping off does create space, but Manchester United just don't have anyone running in behind to try and take advantage of it. So we see that space here again in behind Ronaldo, but Ronaldo obviously dropped off to try and link play and is really far, cannot make that run. Eventually we see the ball go out towards the other side and roughly the same thing happens again. So one change that I wanted to point out in the way that they played in the second half, this being Manchester United, was that they had their number sixes. So initially the Manchester United number sixes were Bruno Fernandes and Pogba, but in the second half we still have Fernandes, but now the second six was Fred, and they looked to try and overload this right hand side quite a bit more. This also did happen with Pogba and Fernandes at times, where they were also looking to try and overload either side, but then also especially overload the right hand side. Quick note, Ronaldo dropping off again to try and link play. Taking over for Fred as the centre midfielder or CDM, dropping to become a central centre back is now Matic, who did this role with aplomb. Again, Atletico Madrid, good at tracking players here. We've got Kondogbia, who had an excellent game tracking Fred. You've got their back four again in the 4-4-2 or the 5-3-2 becoming a 4-4-2. So you've got that back four, and then you've got your four in midfield and your front two. As mentioned earlier, we have one of the centre-backs for Manchester United, in this case Varane, able to run around the centre-forward for Atletico Madrid, in this case Felix. We've got one of the forwards for Manchester United dropping off, just as I did earlier, but now we've got a runner looking to try and exploit that space. Here with Fernandes, we've got him looking to exploit it, as well as also Fred looking to be in that space and overload, looking to hopefully combine if Manchester United are able to create anything there. Again, we've got one of the forwards in this shape looking to float as well, so far-sided. Sancho looking to kind of take over for Ronaldo, I guess you could say as well, but looking to float inside. When Lingard came on later in the game, he also looked to try and float from his left-hand side inside. Unfortunately, Varane is a bit spooked by the Atletico Madrid players constricting the space on that right-hand side, but Manchester United are able to pass the ball back to Matic, and him with a calm head and vision looks to try and play Manchester United in behind with a through ball. Again, this is something that Manchester United really weren't doing very much in the first half, so this is quite a big change. And again, you've got Bruno Fernandes, just as in the first half, looking to try and run in behind. Unfortunately, he was offside. I also wanted to point out the overload that I mentioned earlier. So again, we've got that back three. We've got Matic as that central centre-back, the two actual centre-backs in Varane and Maguire splitting with your full-backs high and wide. So you've got at this point Telles rather than Shaw, and you've got Wan-Bissaka as the right wing back. The two number 8s in Fred and Bruno Fernandes high, looking to create and looking to try and overload that right-hand side especially. Now we've got Ilanga on this right-hand side, and he was looking to try and threaten him behind, take advantage of Atletico Madrid trying to move into their 4-4-2 shape, which leaves a little bit of ambiguity on that left-hand side for Atletico Madrid, right-hand side for Manchester United to try and exploit. Unfortunately, by the time the ball gets to Ilanga in this scenario, he's had to curve his run and he's forced to pass back towards Varane. But again, we've got our number 8s looking to try and overload this side, looking to try and create some sort of crossing opportunity in this space. This overloading of the wide spaces, I think, was done quite a bit better in the second half for Manchester United. Initially, by having Pogba and Fernandes move out into those spaces as Manchester United progressed the ball into those channels. Eventually, this moves on to more of a right-hand side bias with both Pogba and Fernandes, coming towards that right-hand side, and then eventually Fernandes and Fred taking up that role. So in this scenario, we've had a ball out into this left-hand side. Manchester United are forced back. Again, no, you've got Fernandes looking to try and overload this side. And now, as the ball is forced back, it's going to go over towards that right-hand side. And now we're going to have Pogba looking to try and do the same on this right-hand side against a 5-3-2. Those spaces just ahead of the wing-backs, in those spaces either side of the three in midfield, are where the team should find space. And so as the ball is passed out towards that right-hand side, you've got Pogba looking to try and exploit the space just to the side here of Kondogbia, where it will be a little bit more difficult for the likes of Lodi to be able to come out, at least not as quickly now that you have someone in that position. Also Bruno Fernandes, he's coming across to try and overload that space and help out Pogba and Sancho and the like. Lastly, I just wanted to point out how Manchester United were looking to defend. I did mention how Fred earlier in the game was a little bit questionable as a CDM. Having Matic there was definitely better positionally, and defensively he's just better as the CDM. Obviously slower, but better. Before the substitutions, Pogba was the one doing this role in the 4-1-4-1, but now later in the game, Fred was the one that took over from Pogba. Manchester United tried to keep up the pressure with that 4 in midfield, with Fred or Matic looking to be that CDM and just kind of sweep in just behind, try and take care of these 2 centre forwards. If the ball does progress into these wide spaces for Atletico Madrid, then Matic is able to drop in to become another centre back if the ball is crossed in. And with that, we've covered the key points. If you want to have a look at the full tactical summary, if you'd like to read the full tactical summary, have a look in the comments or description down below. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And with that, we're out.